members very much.
Thank you. Moving on, we have Senator Hueso here for 287, it looks like. Welcome.
Thank you.
And file item number 2.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members.
Good morning.
I'm really pleased to be here. Thank you for allowing me to present this very important bill that will help save lives across California. When I was on the City Council in San Diego, we approved a similar measure that required the placement of automatic defibrillators in high occupancy buildings, and that ordinance, that law in San Diego has been so successful that we thought applying it to California statewide would help to save hundreds of lives, as many lives have already been saved. This year, over 350,000 Americans are expected to suffer from sudden cardiac arrest. 9 out of 10 will not survive. I just had a friend on Saturday pass away from a heart attack at his workplace, and I feel that should he had had immediate medical attention, he probably would have survived. And more of this is happening in our community when it can be prevented. And I think we've been working on this bill. We've been working with the Business Properties Association. They have removed their opposition. We have worked on something that they can support because they agree that a very small measure on their part can help to save lives. And I think us as a community, we should all work together and try to do whatever we can to help save lives. We have we have an actual AED instructional device here. We had a representative from the American Medical Response Association here to help us operate it. Madam Chair, they could not make it here today, but to show that even a monkey can operate this equipment, I have volunteered to demonstrate it today.
Pick a no vote.
You're a Republican because you have to have a heart.
I was going to say, I know.
Look what I started, Madam Chair. I apologize.
Yes, please show us how it works. Mr. Wilk.
So I thought I'd you know what they say about monkey see, monkey do. But anyway, here we go. This is an actual human torso here. So I'm gonna apply this. I thought I'd apply it to David, but I thought that would be too cruel for this demonstration. This is the AED device. So in case somebody is suffering of a heart attack, this is what you would actually, very similar. This is an instructional device. So this is what you would actually pull from the, so the first thing you do is you pull this out of the container and you start. That's the start button there.
Begin by removing all clothing from the patient's chest. Cut clothing if needed.
All right.
No?
We got a committee now.
Well, this is our patient.
When patient's chest is bare, remove protective cover and take out white adhesive pads.
So it says pull there. We pull that.
Maybe your staff member could hold the piece of paper. There we go.
So
Peel one pad from place pad exactly as shown in the picture. Press firmly to patient's bare skin.
There we go.
No one should touch the patient.
No one. David?
No one should touch the patient.
So it's actually.
Shock advised.
There we go.
Stay clear of patient.
So you
Press
push the
shock
button.
Delivered.
Oh.
CPR. For help with CPR, press the flashing blue button.
With help with
Place
CPR.
the heel of one hand in the center of the chest, between the nipples.
We don't have to
Place
show
your
that, but-
other hand on top
So
of the
that's-
first. Push the chest down firmly.
Okay.
To
So that.
That's
So
great.
it goes through a process of instructing the person to administer CPR and to give aid, and hopefully in that process they're calling for assistance. These devices are becoming more efficiently priced, and we think that working with the development community, the business community, that we can site these in more locations in our state to ensure that, well, anyway, you can put that away, so that we can help save lives. I just want to.
Adult training pads.
So I just want to, generally explain that the amendments we accepted were to ensure that these devices will be located in high occupancy buildings. So that would exclude S and H class storage buildings where we don't want them. We don't want them to be in empty buildings. And of course, we also exempt certain licensed hospital facilities that already have medical care. And we went through a kind of list of buildings that do not qualify, those under construction, those are vacant or under renovation. And this would be on all new construction. So any new construction of high occupancy buildings and of state buildings as well. So any future state of California buildings under construction will also be required, if they're high occupancy buildings and meet these standards, to have AED devices located within them. And there's some general provisions on what is required in terms of upkeep, but minimal upkeep is required of these units. They have batteries that last 9 years. So we believe that the technology is such that is ready to be used in conjunction with high occupancy buildings, and we can help save lives in California in a way that no other place in the world has taken a leadership role. And I hope that we can all support this bill. We have some supporters here today.
Yes, in support.
Johan Claes, representing Paramedics Plus, Alameda County's 911 EMS ambulance provider. We donate these devices regularly throughout the county to various groups and institutions, and we support the measure. These work very well.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Sean Henschel here on support on behalf of American Medical Response, California's leading provider of 911 emergency services. We want to thank the author for his leadership on this issue and respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. In support.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, Megan Brightwell on behalf of the California Professional Firefighters in support.
Thank you. In opposition.
Madam Chair and members, I'm Matthew Harg with the California Business Properties Association. I'm here today in support of the bill. We previously had a oppose unless amended. Pleased that we've been working with the author's staff and the committee staff on these amendments. We've always supported the intent of the bill, but we had some operational issues, and we really appreciate the fact that we've been able to work through those operational issues and can now support the bill. Thank you.
Great. All right. Any questions? Yeah, we have a motion and a second. Don't see any comments by... Oh, Ms. Baker?
Thank you. So one question I do have, it just clarify the applicability to buildings and whether or not they're public or private. So this also applies to newly constructed state-owned buildings?
Yes.
But we're not mandating it at the local government level?
No.
And I understand there are some AEDs that are one-time use that are a lot less expensive. I know in our school district we were looking at that. Because they were just less expensive than the ones that are repeated use. I couldn't tell from the language if this allows for that. It doesn't seem to specify that it has to be a reusable one. Do you know if it's possible to use a one-time use to comply with this?
It doesn't specify, but it does require that the AED device in use be functional.
Okay. And I understand there's been a removal of opposition, as we just heard. And are you working at all any further on the occupancy of the building issue, particularly those buildings that have large possible occupancy but very few people in them? We're not experiencing a lot of that right now in the Bay Area in terms of building occupancy, but other parts of the state are. And I understand there's different ways to measure occupancy. There's average occupancy load. I'm sure that's been part of your conversations. Can you address where you are in those?
It has, and we did look at buildings that often have lots of people and then don't. We generally went with a a measurement that provides more of a statistical probability, where we have buildings that have a regular high attendance, and those are defined under the bill as bills that are measured and expected to have a regular high attendance.
Okay. So that's the total occupancy allowed, or is it the average occupancy load?
It's the total occupancy allowed.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jones, and then Mr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, thanks for working with the opposition. I was fully prepared to vote no on this today, but it looks like you've done a lot of work in the meantime, so looks like I'll support it today. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Dodd.
Yes, Senator, I think this is I think it's a great bill. I do have a couple questions based on what Ms. Baker had brought up. One is certainly understanding the local control issues.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm wondering is having been in local government for 14 years, there are large bodies that meet in these places, and sometimes they're very, very stressful meetings, and I've seen some people go down over time. Was there some thought process? Was it just the local control and not wanting to put that on the local governments?
It was the challenge of imposing a mandate, and you know how difficult that is here in this process. We would love for all high occupancy buildings to participate, and imposing a mandate under the structure of our laws just makes it very difficult for us to do that. Of course, we do know that a lot of local governments already are utilizing AED devices, and normally we do have law enforcement and fire safety that are usually within proximity. I know in the city of San Diego we took measures to cite AEDs even before we passed the law, and we know that in speaking with different jurisdictions, there are a lot of cities that are already covered. We looked at the practical aspect of the current situation and the laws to do something that will provide very uniform coverage in areas where a high amount of people congregate. And we think that this is the best possible bill that we could put together to ensure that there's universal public safety or health and safety for people when attending places that have big congregations of people.
Thank you.
Mr. Bloom.
I just want to thank you for bringing this bill. This is a proven technology for saving lives, and it's deployed out there and is actively saving lives currently. I think one message to the public that we always need to give when we talk about these devices is you still have to call 911. That's still important.
And the device states that.
I'm sure it sounds like it
when you're using
tells you a lot.
Device, it reminds you to call 911, so it's part of the process.
To remind you to call home too.
Well, thank you very much. We do have a motion and a second. With that, we'll take our roll. So do pass as amended to judiciary.
Bonilla.
Aye.
Bonilla, aye. Jones.
Aye.
Jones, aye. Baker. Aye. Baker, aye. Bloom.
Aye.
Bloom, aye. Campos. Chang. Dodd.
Aye.
Dodd, aye. Eggman.
Aye.
Eggman, aye. Gatto. Gatto, aye. Holden. Mullen.
Aye.
Mullen, aye. Ting.
Aye.
Ting, aye. Wilk.
Aye.
Wilk, aye. Wood.
Aye.
Wood, aye.
Thank you, members.
11-0.
11-0, measures out. Thank you very much, Senator. Mr. McGuire, I believe you're next. This is file item 12, SB 643. Medical marijuana. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Grateful to be here, and honorable committee members, thank you for the opportunity to be able to present today. I want to start by thanking the chairwoman, all of you on the committee, and the hardworking staff for such an excellent and thorough staff report. It took many hours, and we're very, very grateful. I believe it accurately highlights the urgent need for the legislature to act on medical marijuana and make some excellent points and recommendations related to the legislation. The North Coast District, which I represent along with my assembly partner, Dr. Jim Wood, is the primary growing region for medical marijuana, with Mendocino, Lake, Humboldt, and Trinity counties responsible for up to 70% of the marijuana grown in the western United States, or 60% of the medical marijuana grown in the nation. This is a rare concentration of an industry and brings both benefits and, frankly, incredible challenges to our mutual communities and especially to our environment. Challenges that we're tasked to help solve. Since the voters of California passed Prop 215, medical marijuana cultivation and consumption has exploded, both here in the Golden State and across our great country. Aside from local zoning regulations, this legal, estimated $40 billion industry here in the state of California is virtually unregulated. For 2 decades now, the state has allowed this industry to grow, for the most part, unchecked. And our communities, our environment, and the public's health has been severely damaged or is at risk. The current drought has only made the urgency of this legislation more necessary than ever. Marijuana growers range from small family farm operations, the majority located on the North Coast, many of whom have farmed for decades, who want to comply with state and local regulations, if we had any state regulations for them to comply with, to violent international crime organizations that must be eliminated from the business. Entire watersheds have been dewatered, all in the name of these rogue grows. Tens of thousands of acres of marijuana are located on the beautiful North Coast, and the rogue growers are literally sucking rivers dry due to significantly decreased flow conditions because of the drought, and illegal water diversions benefiting the vast fields of marijuana grows. And I believe that Dr. Wood saw those firsthand about a week and a half ago. Just this past summer, compounded by our state's historic drought, the Eel and Mattole rivers ran dry, threatening communities, nearly eliminated the fall and winter runs of endangered salmon, and putting wildlife on the brink of extinction, such as the forest-dwelling fisher. Northern and central California watersheds have been inundated with sediment and poisons, such as fertilizers and pesticides. In fact, cannabis grows are the number one source of sediment and nutrient loads in Northern California rivers and streams. In addition, the violence with this industry must be stopped. Because the state has looked the other way for so long, a significant criminal element has taken hold. And while the majority of growers and those involved in the industry are law-abiding Californians, organized crime has taken hold. And I'd like to give you a few statistics. The city of Eureka has 6 times the violent crime rate compared to a city its size on the national level. The Humboldt and Trinity County District Attorney offices are facing significant trials on violence and homicides related to the industry. In both Humboldt and Trinity counties, in specific areas such as Post Mountain Trinity and Rancho Sequoia and Humboldt, CAL FIRE will no longer go into a wildland fire without having law enforcement do a sweep first. And once wild forests have been booby-trapped, that can cause bodily harm or kill hikers, which we're going to show in just a bit. Rogue operators have clear-cut thousands of acres of forest illegally, both on public and private lands, without regard for the long-term impacts they are creating for neighboring landowners, downstream farms, or endangered species. And with the permission of the chair, I'd like to just go to a few pictures. So right here, what we see is an average size of an outdoor grow. This is located in Mendocino County. So what has happened is that this grow has been cleared from oak woodlands illegally. There are no regulations that dictate how or where a grower should plant their marijuana. These are marijuana plants. They look like pine trees. Hey, there we go. Right here. So then I'm going to go to the next slide right here. We'll just go down and put that right there.
Those are pine trees. The marijuana's in the bare area.
in the
Hey,
circle.
there we go. Hey, so let's go to the next one. So this, I'll take that real quick. So this piece right here is what typically happens. So what you have here is a pine tree, is a conifer forest in Humboldt County. The Assembly member is absolutely right. He knows his trees.
No, he's from L.A. He
hey-
thought they were pine, and you corrected
Hey, there
him
we
as
go.
conifer.
So what we have here are unpermitted grading in ponds. So what this once was a main tributary to the Eel River, a creek. And what they did is they dammed up the creek. So you no longer have fish passage. And what these growers will do is that they'll fill the pond with creek water, dump the fertilizers into the pond with a shabbily constructed pond. They literally just move dirt into the creek, block the creek. And then during the winter, or even during the summer, the pond breaks because it is just shoddy construction, and all the nutrient flow from the fertilizers that are in the pond water flows into the eel, or the mattole, or the Klamath, or the Russian, and we can keep going. And all of this is done illegally and illegally cleared, and we have 50,000 grow sites like this across California. This next piece is what is left over when marijuana grows either abandon their site or that there may be a potential raid. So the state doesn't have any resources to be able to clean up any of the grows. So you have everything from open pit latrines full of human waste to garbage to rodenticides, which are illegal in California, which many times are trucked in from Mexico. And that's why we're seeing the fisher going extinct. The fisher eats the rodents eats the rodenticide, and now you have a mammal on the brink of extinction. And that life cycle is continuing across Northern California forests. This picture looks harmless, but where these marijuana plants are used to be a creek. So what they did is they took part of a hill, they filled in a creek, and then put in the marijuana plants. Upstream, you actually have a pond that is capturing the creek water. On the other side of this, that dirt will simply slip in the winter when the pond gives out, and all of that will flow into a river. And this here, the Assembly member saw a lot of this. This is a device that you see commonly, row grows. So I want to make a point and a distinction. There are families that have been growing on the North Coast for 20 or 30 years, and they're not the problem. In fact, I'd say the majority of cannabis cultivators are not the challenge. But because we've gone unregulated for so long, we've now allowed a criminal element to take hold. And what they do is they booby trap the grows. So there's a tripwire that an individual right here, and if you hit that wire, the shotgun shells would then be set off. And you're either going to lose a leg or your life. And this is literally, these type of devices are all throughout Northern California. In fact, the mayor of Fort Bragg was shot and killed. His job during the day was to inspect forests. He stumbled upon an opium poppy grow. And so you have individuals with heavy firearms or traps like that. And look, I know that we are all well aware of the regulations, the permits, the certificates, and other processes that farmers and ranchers have to go through when growing row crops, grapes, and raising cattle. But right now, there are no regulations or permits for marijuana farmers, and our environment is paying the price. And this creates an uneven playing field for those that have to comply to state agricultural standards. And our state forests are being sacrificed and rivers are literally running dry due to the state's impotent approach to regulating medical cannabis. Now is the time for the legislature to take action, fulfilling a promise made to voters that rules and regulations would follow their act of passing Proposition 215. The responsible grower groups are working with us, and you're going to hear from them today, along with our partners at the regional board, along with Assemblymember Wood, to combat the situation, which at times resembles the Wild West. And these groups are eager to comply with standards that all other ag producers are expected to follow if we actually gave it to them. We had a series of meetings and tours just this last weekend with a couple of senators from Southern California who met with law enforcement, fish and wildlife officers, and growers. And they were blown away by the scale and complexity of the marijuana industry. There may be some here today that you may hear from that don't agree with the issue of medical marijuana. And I understand that. But the fact is this. The medical marijuana industry is legal in California due to the Compassionate Use Act, Prop 215, passed by California voters. The intention has always been, 19 years ago, the legislature would act to create a comprehensive regulatory framework for medical cannabis. This has never happened, and now our communities are paying the price. And I think that most will agree, whether you are a marijuana cultivator or a county sheriff, Prop 215 created a patchwork of confusing local rules and land use regulations in hundreds of cities and counties across the state that conflict with each other. In fact, the U.S. Justice Department recently made it clear that it expects states who allow medical marijuana, like California, to have a robust system of regulation and enforcement or face federal involvement. California is the only state in the union, that has legalized medical marijuana, but doesn't have the laws and regulations to back it up. And we desperately need the resources to quell the violence that has exploded across the North State and to protect our natural resources. Just over a month ago, the U.S. House of Representatives passed legislation endorsing the Justice Department's position. States that have medical marijuana laws need to have a strong regulatory framework in place. That was endorsed by both Republicans and Democrats alike. And I do believe that this year is the year that we can finally act and create a statewide system that will put an end to our chaotic and, quite frankly, ineffective approach to this multi-billion-dollar industry. We can take action as Democrats and Republicans and finally solve the problems that have been plaguing our state for decades. 643 is designed to specifically address these dangerous and concerning issues. It creates a statewide comprehensive program overseeing the medical marijuana industry, from general oversight, law enforcement, licensing, product content, marketing, taxing, transporting, zoning, local control, resale, and labor regulations. All of these and more are addressed in the legislation. To address the concerns in the Senate, we have placed the Office of Medical Marijuana Regulation under the Secretary of Business, Consumer Services, and Housing, and that was from BMP over on the Senate side. The Secretary oversees the Department of Alcohol Beverage Control, as well as the Department of Consumer Affairs and other business licensing programs, and is well suited for the task. But no one agency, as the Chair and committee staff has pointed out, can accomplish this enormous task alone, which is why we require licenses to be in compliance with all applicable agricultural requirements, consumer protection requirements, food and product safety and environmental requirements, as well as including applicable water quality standards. We also agree with the chairwoman in the committee's analysis that we should require the office to consult with other agencies in promulgating their regulations, not merely authorize them to do so. It's going to take all of us working together. We agree with the chairwoman in the committee that we should adjust the language to require the Board of Equalization to establish clear policies for the state taxation of licensees. Our bill does differ from others that you may have seen in several ways, but the most significant may be that we believe a state agency with hired experts and access to the entire state government is going to be suited to develop the thousands of detailed regulations that will be necessary to oversee this vast and evolving industry. And what we've seen over the last 5 years is that this industry has evolved incredibly. As legislators, it could be tempting to try and control the minutia of the regulatory process. But we believe the industry and the medical marijuana patients of California will be better served by one responsible and professional office. Allowing them a free hand to promulgate the regulations for all the licensees will ensure that they have the latest information to make their decisions, and they'll have access to the nation's leading subject matter experts that can be available for both the legislative and the executive branches to pass smart regulations. The industry and patients are asking to be regulated, and we've heard that time and time again. And we should let that happen in the fashion of other agencies. And while we understand the desire to create a task force to help guide the office, we have found at times task forces made up of special interests can hinder a process rather than help it. But I got to tell you, the bottom line, and the chairwoman clearly articulated this in the position of the committee, that they need to work together with individuals from all experiences. And I'd like to be able to go through the bill very quickly, Madam Chair, about what it would do. Licenses would only be valid if both the state and the local jurisdiction approve the applications. Our goal is to allow as much local control as possible, and we're happy to work with the committee on its language suggestions to make this more clear. The bill ensures that all medical marijuana is tracked from seed to sale to prevent diversion and other illegal activity. The North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board is currently in the process of developing regulations that would create a new 3-tiered system for cultivator, grower, wastewater discharge permits. We believe this should apply to the whole state in order to enhance waterway and environmental regulations and oversight of cannabis grows. The bill will allow local governments to impose a tax, has to be by the voters, which has to be passed once and for all by those individuals that live in the communities, and to help defray the costs of regulating the cultivation and processing of the commodity in their jurisdiction, or frankly enforcing local laws through the sheriff's office and local police departments. This is designed to make sure local authorities can afford the implementation of the regulations allowed under this legislation or any other. Local authorities would have to abide by Prop 218 regulations. And also, it would allow for cost recovery for agencies like planning departments as well. The bill ensures that all transportation of medical marijuana be strongly regulated and tracked. Edibles, compounds, oils, and extracts, the fastest growing part of the industry. And by the way, some estimates say 30% of all medical cannabis consumption is now through oils, edibles, and compounds. Our legislation would allow for the office to make sure the laws keep up with the market. And that was a mistake that Colorado, frankly, brought forward, is they never focus on edibles, which is the fastest growing part of the market. This would require that all medical marijuana grown, produced, distributed, prescribed, and sold in the state meet the California organic standards by January 1 of 2022. The reason for that is the number one source of nutrient loads, fertilizers, and pesticides are coming from these grows. If we take them out of the grow stream, we'll no longer see the contamination within the waterways. Initial licenses would be valid for 12 months and be renewable for up to 36 months. All license locations and license information would be given to local law enforcement. The bill also requests the Board of Equalization to estimate tax revenues from medical marijuana so that we are all working with the same numbers, and that's been, frankly, a bit of a challenge. It would have the office create appellations of origin for medical marijuana, similar to the wine grapes grown in the southern part of our district, that will help establish and perpetuate authenticity of the industry. And this bill would not supersede provisions of Measure D, as approved by the voters of the great city of Los Angeles, or any other similar measures. It focuses on local control. And obviously of great importance to the residents and lawmakers of the city of LA is Measure D. We've been working closely with those representatives. This bill deals only with medical marijuana and does nothing to legalize the recreational use of marijuana. Voters will have their say soon enough. Finally, Madam Chair, your committee staff has also made several suggested cleanups in the language, which we greatly appreciate and would like to take the opportunity to continue to work with you and your staff on this language as we amend the bill in the next committee. In closing, I've always been upfront that I believe that there should only be one bill that advances this year related to medical marijuana. This legislature needs a unified approach to this complicated issue, and we need to put politics and personalities aside if we hope to advance good policy for the patients and people of California. We are in active discussions with the authors of AB 266, and I do want to thank that entire team for the incredible discussions that we're having. We're trying to work through the policy differences between the two bills. And I also want to take a moment to thank Assemblyman Wood. His bill, AB 243, is an important part of this discussion, and Assemblymember Wood is also an active participant in this process. And I also wanted to say how grateful I am to the Assembly member for all of his work on this important issue and how much time it's taken. I have great hope that we're going to be able to put the importance of solving the issue ahead of politics, and that we'll be able to advance a shared vision to regulating the medical cannabis industry here in California. We simply can't afford to wait. I look forward to working with all of you, and I would respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you.